But when he sent me a picture, I was like, okay, yeah, he looks like, I had never seen a trisomy 18 baby, but he looked like a Down syndrome baby. I'm like, he just looks a little different.
Right.
Just in his face. Like, it wasn't like huge things, which is what I was expecting for a trisomy 18. He just looked like a little different. So I was like, okay, interesting. And then when we got there, they were like, we can't really figure out what's going on. And then what they did is that hospital, it was like the children's hospital in the area, was where we got our fetal echocardiogram. So they had my genetic testing on file. And the minute they found that, it was like everything clicked. They were like, well, maybe this is what's wrong. But nobody suspected it at first because he looked like so normal.
Holy Wild Birth is a podcast embracing the reclamation of giving birth, rooted in God's original design, undisturbed.
Here, we share home birth stories highlighting God's presence as the great midwife, as well as conversations about all aspects of a holistic, spirit-led childbearing year. From the perspectives of myself, traditional midwife Lauren Hall of Rooted in Eden Private Contract Association,
and me, holistic doula and birthkeeper Brooke Collier of Sister Birth.
To choose a holy wild birth journey is to consecrate all your decisions unto the Lord.
And to reclaim creation unadulterated by centuries of human attempts to control and improve upon what God has already called good.
Please remember, birth is not a medical event, but a natural process. We are not your care providers, and this should not be taken as medical advice. Hello, welcome back to Holy Wild Birth Podcast. And today I have a very special, just God story to share with you. Well, actually, to invite our guest to share with you. I have with us Marisol, and she has an amazing birth story and just miraculous story of her son. Get your nice warm beverages, and we have a treat for you today. All right. Welcome, Marisol.
Hi, it's really good to be here. First, I just want to say I really have enjoyed your podcast. I think I listen to a lot of home birth podcasts, but I think something that I've noticed particularly on this one is you're very good at capturing the individuality of each woman and their experience. I think sometimes you can get bored with like the classic home birth stories, but I never do on this podcast because I feel like each woman is just so good, and that you two are both such good interviewers and good at helping each woman express like the individuality of each story, which is just so interesting and really beautiful. And I think it really reflects like the experience of birth in general.
Yeah. Well, thank you. I love that feedback, and I think that is absolutely our heart. And each birth, I always tell my clients this: like, each birth is as individual as the child you are birthing.
Exactly.
So birth can take such a different ways. And I think some people say that and they're expecting some kind of emergency. It's just that, no, it's just a different journey.
Exactly.
They can be beautiful in all of the myriad of ways, just like every sunset looks different every day. So, yeah, I'm very excited to hear your story. I've gotten little tidbits already, and I'm just so eager to hear your whole journey. So, where would you like to start?
Well, I'll share a little bit about my birth with my first son.
Okay.
Just for some context. So we got married in 2021 and we got pregnant literally right away. I was just not mentally prepared. I am not one of those women who has been like thinking about birth my whole life or like always, thought about what I wanted. I had zero idea, literally zero when we got pregnant. And I was definitely not like crunchy, holistic, anything along those lines. Like it was very new to me, but pretty quickly, like basically right when I got pregnant, one of my friends, I reached out to a friend to ask for advice on like picking an OB. I never thought I would do anything other than an OB. And she just recommended like, hey, I'm actually seeing midwives in a hospital. And have you ever thought at all natural birth? And I'm like, I didn't even occur to me that I would do that, but interesting. And this is all like post-COVID too, where I think most of us lost our trust in like medicine. So I was definitely open to like, oh yeah, maybe there's a better way other than like the hospital medical route. So she recommended to watch the movie The Business of Being Born. And of course my husband and I were like shook. but also, once again, it seemed so reasonable considering everything we had seen during COVID. So anyway, my first pregnancy was definitely like a journey for sure. I started a book club with some other girls that wanted natural births. We reread the book Made for This by Mary Hasseltine, which is super beautiful.
Yeah.
It's a really good book, especially for girls that are more like me, who just like have never really been introduced to anything other than the medical side of things. It's really helpful specifically for those kind of women. And then these girls in the book club were amazing for me and still are in my motherhood, but like really helpful in like finding and just like being on that journey towards like discovering God's plan for birth and for motherhood. And yeah, so definitely was convicted about natural birth by the time I went to give birth, right?
Yeah.
And I did a birth course and everything. But I started with the hospital midwives. They actually ended up being pretty terrible. I switched to an OB who actually was wonderful. Like still a good friend of mine, truly like a wonderful, wonderful man who has a huge and deep respect for God's design for birth. But he's still an OB and it was still a hospital.
Sure.
And it ended up not at all going the way I wanted it to be. I had some pretty high blood pressure towards the end, which I now realize was due to my diet. At the time, I didn't know how to like well during pregnancy. And then I ended up getting a Pitocin induction, and it was just like the whole shebang, just like awful. I actually ended up not getting an epidural, which I'm really grateful for because it gave me the confidence that I could do a home birth, because I was like, well, if I could do that with Pitocin, I could do it naturally. I know that.
Do it with Pitocin,
yeah.
Period. Like,
yeah. I mean, looking back, I'm so glad I didn't get the epidural, but I don't know if I would ever do Pitocin again. Like if I had to do Pitocin, I think I would choose the epidural because Pitocin's just, I don't know. I probably wouldn't. But Pitocin's awful. It made my birth experience very scary, which I realized now, having had a home birth, how much birth is so not scary. Yeah. And how wonderful and natural it can feel. And Pitocin is just so opposite of that. And I think, going into the birth, I was just expecting that. And then, not getting that was so hard for me. Yeah. And then after the birth, I had a lot of trauma. But thanks be to God, I found this incredible Christian counselor who has a specific program for women with birth trauma. And it's a 6-week program essentially. And so you have this book that you take home that you fill out, and then you just talk through your birth with her. And it was, oh my gosh, so life-changing, so helpful. I felt like I came out of those 6 weeks just really having so much of that experience resolved, and really feeling so hopeful I knew the moment I got to the hospital with my first that I was going to do a home birth for the second. I was like, I'm not doing this again. I was just so grateful for that counseling experience, because I felt like, after that birth, I had so many doubts and so many, is my body really capable? Is birth really beautiful? And working through that experience was just so healing, in so many ways, so healing. And so I was really grateful that I was just so grateful for her.
Yeah. Is that a local program or?
Yes, so it's called Readiness Counseling, and they have it in a few states, but I actually think it went out of business. Okay. And I think they started a new practice. If I can find out if they started a new practice, because then I'll go ahead and send it to you so you can put it in the show notes, because truly,
yeah, because you mentioned the book that they had, maybe something our listeners could buy.
I'll have to look.
Or was it within?
No, I think it was something that she put together herself.
Sure.
But this specific counseling is for women who are experiencing either birth trauma, miscarriage, stillbirth, all of those things. Just anything related to birth and motherhood is
all under the Readiness
That's all
Counseling.
that they do. Yeah, that's literally all that they do.
Awesome. Well, yeah, definitely would love to have any links or, connections to this woman that helped you.
It was so
feel
special.
Like sharing
I can see what I can find, and I'll send you what I can.
Awesome.
Yeah, going into my birth with my second, I did have a miscarriage in between.
I'm so
which
sorry.
ended up being quite complicated. It was called a molar pregnancy, which is it's a whole other thing.
You've been through it.
I know, right?
You?
I know,
Goodness.
Right? And supposedly everything's unrelated. So anyway,
these are all very different things.
Exactly. So the molar pregnancy is just a whole other thing. We won't even get into it because it's a very complex miscarriage, and I ended up needing a very complex DNC, and I used that OB who is really wonderful. Anyway, so then once I got pregnant with technically my third pregnancy, but my second baby, because a molar pregnancy actually isn't a baby, that's like a whole other thing. It's basically like a phantom pregnancy. Anyway, so when I got pregnant with my second, I was like, okay, definitely doing a home birth. Like, we know this for sure. And we actually interviewed her midwife like the day we found out we were pregnant. I don't even remember how that happened, but it was just like over Zoom and just immediately clicked with her. I felt so safe. Joseph, please go over here. Okay. I felt so safe with her. She has a ridiculous amount of experience. She's been attending births since she was like 14. And she's got 8 kids that are fully grown. So I don't know how old she is now, but that is a long time that she's been doing births. She is just incredibly knowledgeable and experienced. And I felt so just instantly. So like, this woman I know is going to like respect me, guide me, and protect me. Like, if anything goes wrong, I just felt so secure with her instantly. She has this like bio they had us read before we even interviewed her. My husband and I read it and we were like, this is our midwife. Like, this is perfect. I was super thankful. And then, just immediately I was so struck by the difference between like OB and hospital care versus home birth midwife care.
Yeah.
I just was shocked that like she would come to my house.
Midwife-based care, hospital midwife.
Yeah.
Hospital midwife. I can't talk.
Which
apparently
the hospital midwives, these
hospital
specific
midwife-based
ones,
care as well, right?
Yeah, it was no different than what you would see in any conventional hospital. Like, I actually felt more respected by my OB than I did by these women.
Yeah.
Even in like especially in different choices I was wanting to make versus about like vitamin K and like the fetal Doppler, they were like, so like, what's wrong with you? And I'm just like, okay.
Oh my goodness.
So
I'm so sorry.
It was honestly, it didn't bother me that much. I'm just like, I don't trust you guys. I'm leaving. Sorry. But yeah, my home birth midwife was so wonderful. I just was shocked that she would sit in my house. We would drink tea for like 30 minutes, right? Yeah. She would ask me everything about my diet. She would ask me everything about my physical exercise, how I'm feeling. And there was nothing that was brushed off, right? So I had horrible, horrible nausea with my first. Like, I threw up every day, right? It was awful. And I felt like everyone was just saying like, oh, pregnancy's tough, right? Whereas my home birth midwife was like, well, usually pregnancy nausea and sickness is either a sign of malnutrition or a sign of unbalanced blood sugar. And I discovered that that's what it was, which is also what's so funny is because the hospital midwives with my first, the solution that they gave me was to drink a few sips of ginger ale every morning to settle my stomach, which it like worked in the minute because it's like ginger ale, right? And like, I don't know, ginger makes your tummy feel good for like a few minutes.
A few seconds.
But
and it probably had
then,
enough sugar
of
in it,
course,
but it helps your blood sugar come up a little bit for a second.
Well, spike. Like, of course, there's nothing in my stomach. And here I am having, I don't know, probably 15 to 20 grams of sugar first thing in the morning. Like, and so, of course, no wonder I feel like trash for the rest of the day, right? Because my body is like, how do we balance this? Like, how do we handle all of this sugar?
It's like, we're just going to spike you. You're not going to feel nauseous. And now we're going to crash.
And then with my second pregnancy, I was eating great and I was meeting with the dietitian and I was like, once again, I really before this knew not very much about health, so I really just had a lot to learn. So yeah, my midwife encouraged me to meet with the dietitian. She also was just like really passionate about like holding me accountable for not like rigorous exercise, but just like being active. Like, are you walking enough steps a day? Are you stretching? Are you your body, she would always say, your body has to be in shape to have a natural birth. It doesn't have to be like super strong. You don't have to be a bodybuilder or you don't have to be running marathons, but you just have to be active. Like, you can't be sitting around all day. And she was always really, really good about like holding me accountable for that. And I just was I was just amazed by the fact that like, this is what real prenatal care is supposed to look like. It's not just supposed to be like a 10-minute appointment where they just check the baby's heartbeat and then you're done. So yeah. And then I did a 20-week anatomy scan, and everything looked fine. And then around 25 weeks, my midwife brought up the option of taking the RhoGAM shot, which is like it's still something that's very confusing to me, and I still haven't completely decided how I felt about it. So I was really on the fence about it, which I don't know if most of your listeners know what it is. It's only applicable to women with negative blood types. And
Right.
I honestly don't feel qualified to explain it. So if you don't know what it is, just Google it and then come back to the podcast. So anyway, I was really on the fence about it. And so she just brought up the option of, so another thing was that during the anatomy scan, we wanted to know the gender, but the ultrasound tech like couldn't like find it. So I didn't really want a super long ultrasound. So I was like, whatever, we don't need to know. It's fine. And so then when I told my midwife this, she was like, well, this is also like what's so wild. It's like totally a God thing because there was actually a RhoGAM shortage during my pregnancy. So that was like another thing we had to like take into account. Like they didn't have enough shots for like everyone that needed it, right? In like the country. It's just kind of random. So like so random.
Quote unquote needed it.
Well, exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly. So, but one thing that they were asking women to do, like giving the option of women to do, is to get like a genetic testing to find out the baby's blood type.
Okay.
So that if the baby has a negative blood type, you can forgo the shot. And so I was like, okay, this sounds like a perfectly good, at least first step, because then if the baby has a negative blood type, then I don't have to think about it. And if the baby has a positive blood type, well, then I can do more research and figure out what I want to do.
Did this
So,
not come up in your first pregnancy? Or
I
even
didn't
in
know
the
any
molar
better.
pregnancy in the DNC?
I didn't know any better, so I just took it.
Okay, so you
With the
took
molar
it.
pregnancy, I did not, because it was not there was no DNA different than my own.
Fair, you're right. Molar. I was thinking the
Yeah.
DNC, but you're right. Okay.
Exactly. But with the
Yeah.
molar pregnancy, no. With my first, I just didn't know any better, so I just
You
took
just
it.
took it and did it. Got it.
Exactly. So anyway, so I just was like, okay, this is a fine solution, right? So I go to like the lab to get the genetic testing, and it kind of occurs to me like in the moment as they're taking my blood. I was like, wait, just so you know, like I actually don't want like the full genetic screening. I just want to know the blood type. And you can also tell me the gender. And they were like, sorry, we can't do that. Like we have to do the whole genetic panel. Like there isn't an option. And they had already taken my blood. I was like, okay. And I'd never done a genetic screening before. And it was never something I would ever intend to do because I'm not a huge fan of prenatal testing. Obviously, it wasn't going to change like whether or not I would keep the pregnancy, of course. But
Right.
I just felt like the less I knew, the better. But I was like so like flustered, but we went forward with it anyway. But I literally told the tech, I'm like, oh, well, I guess I'll just ignore whatever results come back on the genetic screening, right? So 2 weeks later, my midwife calls and she's like, hey, I need to talk to you. Like, and I'm like, okay, what's up? Like, she never called me. And she's like, well, why don't you like go get your husband and like just go sit down somewhere and like get the toddler occupied and then call me back. And I'm like, okay. So we do that. And so we call her back and she's like, so the test is coming back that you're high risk for a genetic condition called trisomy 18, which I had never heard of before in my life. But she's explaining to me like it's similar to Down syndrome in the sense that there's an extra chromosome, but the extra chromosome is on the 18th instead of the 21st chromosome. There's with the big difference, practically, is that trisomy 18 has much more severe developmental delays and just much more medical complexities. And in fact, that the statistics for how long these babies live is actually very grim. And so, of course, I'm like, what? But even as I'm hearing this, and my husband too, even as we're hearing this, like, I can't explain there was definitely like a supernatural peace that was over us. Just like, I look back and I'm like, how was I not rattled by that? Of course, I was like a little shocked. Of course, I had an emotional reaction, but like really deep down, I just had this peace that I couldn't explain. And in fact, I was trying to explain it away with like natural things. So I just kept saying like, well, these tests are so inaccurate, so I just don't believe it, right? And even though I kind of knew that wasn't true, but I just knew that like I knew the baby was okay. And I knew that he was going to be okay. And I knew that I had nothing to worry about. But like, yeah, it was really, really beautiful experience, especially looking back on it now. And just like, because I think one of the worst things that could have happened to me during my pregnancy was for me to just be so anxious and stressed about what would happen to the baby.
Right.
And I think the Lord was just protecting me and protecting the baby. I mean, I know a lot about cortisol and how that affects the babies prenatally. And I just think like the Lord was just protecting us from all of that anxiety and worry.
Yeah, it's so good. Peace
And
beyond
so,
understanding.
No, truly, truly, truly. So I was very much like, I was so skeptical. the first thing I said was like, well, when you say high risk, how high is the risk? And she's like, well, so on the genetic screening, or the NIPT test is specifically what it's called, every person, it will say you're like high risk, but each person gets like an actual, like your specific risk.
Your specific, yeah.
Exactly. And so my baby came back as 1 in 10, and which is pretty high.
Yeah.
But the first thing I say is like, so there's a 90% chance he's totally fine. She's like, well, I guess, yeah, you could say it like that.
Yeah.
So anyway, I was never going to do an amnio, and she would have never recommended that. And actually, it was really good. So usually, like when complications arrive, licensed midwives like legally have to consult with an OB, and she knew I had a good relationship with this OB. And so she actually called him before she talked to me. So she's like, Dr. Sizemore is going to call you tonight too, so you can talk to him too. Obviously, he knows a lot more about this stuff, and you can get his opinion. And I was like, okay. So he called me a few hours later, and he actually confirmed a lot of my skepticism, because he was saying that the test is actually way less accurate when you take it late in pregnancy, because I was 25 weeks at this point, and normally that test is administered like 10 weeks. So he was like, yeah, I'm actually seeing this a lot because of the RhoGAM shortage. Like more girls are getting this test, and we're seeing a lot of false positives. And I'm like, well, that's great. And he's like, I looked at your anatomy scan. Everything looks fine, but I do think you should have one more scan with an MFM. And I'm like, oh man, I don't know. So I was just talking about it with my husband. We were just praying about it. And once again, we just felt peace. We knew the baby was fine, but we were like, I think we just felt like we needed to just mitigate any risks that there were because of home birth. And so we went into the MFM, they did the scan, and basically they only found 2 things, which was, one of them was I had extra amniotic fluid, which can be really common for if there's a blood sugar dysregulation, which I was like, knew I had, and I knew I was working through. I also had the extra amniotic fluid with my first, so I was like, okay, he's fine. I think we're good. And then the second, polyhydramnios is something that's really common in babies with genetic abnormalities. And then, and it's something that can be made a big deal of or not. My midwife does not make a big deal of it, because she's just seen so many cases where it's just like not a problem. Yeah. Same thing with, I had 2 vessel cords. So most cords have, like umbilical cords have 3 vessels, but I had 2. Yeah. And so.
Also called a single umbilical artery.
Yes, exactly. And once again, very indicative of like most babies with genetic abnormalities also have that. But I think she told me 70% of babies with a 2 vessel cord are born totally normal.
I want to say it's 75% are completely normal, and 25%.
Exactly.
If they have an issue, it tends to be incredibly large of an issue, hearts or heart issues, missing chambers, kidney issues, that kind of thing.
Yeah. And I think for that reason, the MFM said she didn't feel like she got a really confident reading of the heart. So for that reason, because of the 2 vessel cord, we had decided we were also just going to do a fetal echocardiogram. So we did that, where they do like a more intense ultrasound of the heart with the pediatric cardiologist. And the pediatric cardiologist sat down with us, and she's like, this heart is perfect. And 92% of trisomy 18 babies have heart defects. So at this point, I was like, okay, if there's no heart defect, if everything else looks good, and of course, when you Google trisomy 18, you see like club feet and like extra digits and like just a lot of things that are very obvious on an ultrasound.
Right, very
obvious. And I'm like, I saw all of his toes. I'm like, his heart is fine. And once again, I was already so skeptical. So I was just like, okay, like we have ruled this out. Like this baby's fine. I've been telling you guys this the whole time. Like, I know the baby's good. And I was really just so thankful for my midwife. She was just so respectful. I think so many midwives would have been like, okay, at this point I'm done. Like, I'm out. Especially like the licensed midwives that, are worried more about that. But she was just like, no, like, I'm here to respect any of your decisions. Like, and I think she also felt like things were kind of being blown out of proportion a little bit. And anyway, so
it sounds like you had all of these tests that were showing that baby was fine.
I know.
Which is just kind of like a God thing when you know the end of the story, that he gave you such peace with all of their testing. What an interesting turn of events. That's not normally. I know. Normally it's everything is fine, and we're doing all of these tests, and all the tests are saying that it's not fine.
Exactly. And that was another thing I think was in my head, is in our little circle, I'd had 3 girlfriends who were delivering at birth centers nearby, who it was all happening like at the same time. All three of them were told, your baby has a small femur, your baby has a thick neck, your baby's going to have developmental problems, like all of these things. And then their babies were all born before Dominic and were totally fine. Like totally. So that was also, I'm like, I'm not going to fall into this trap that my friends all just like had to suffer through. I am just going to trust that everything's fine because I know in my gut that everything's fine. And so, we continued forward with the plan for home birth. Truly never really gave it a second thought at all until in May and June. Dominic was born in August. So in May and June, I had 4 dreams. And so when I was in high school, I did a project on this man. He's a French geneticist. And he was very, he just had this super, super love for the unborn, but also specifically for the unborn with developmental problems. And he was just like a super pro-life activist, but very much in the medical world, like very much writing journals about how like medically and scientifically we have to believe that life begins at conception or else we're not being medically consistent. So, hey buddy, I need you to stop this. Joseph? Okay, here's the water. Anyway, I did this project on him in high school, had never thought about him again. And then I have a dream about him. I'm like, oh, that's interesting. Didn't think about it anymore. Had a second dream about him. I'm like, okay, this is weird. Then I have a third dream, and then in my 4th dream, he's in a rocking chair holding my baby. And I'm like, okay, this is crazy. So I'm like, what is going on with this guy? So I Google him, and I find out that, we're Catholic. I find out that the Catholic Church was actually in the process of making him a saint. And so for those that don't know about that process, one of the things that happens during that process is that like, basically, if we want to determine if he's in heaven, people can ask him for prayers. And then if miraculous things happen, then you like report that to the church. And the church is like, okay, well, if enough miraculous things happen after asking this person for prayers, well, then that could mean that he's in heaven. So that's kind of where we were in that process. So I was like, wait, that's crazy that like the church is trying to examine if this guy's in heaven. I'm having dreams about him. But I also, once again, didn't think there was anything wrong with Dominic. So my logic there was he was very, very against genetic testing, very against it for the same reasons that we just talked about, which is that like it increases the cortisol in the mother. It just adds all this unnecessary stress and there's really nothing you can do about it until the baby's born anyway. And so I was like, you know what? This is just like him trying to tell us you shouldn't have done the testing, right? So so that happened, and then I was sorting through some like letters.
That the testing doesn't define his value or worth.
100%. No, 100%. But I wasn't like my mind. Now looking back, I'm like, oh, I should have known there was something wrong with him. Like, why would I have a dream about a guy who has a love for like special needs children? But at the time, I was like. I wasn't thinking like, oh, God's trying to tell me that he's special needs.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, you know what you know in the moment, but it's just kind of a beautiful...
It was really funny. No, I highly recommend looking up this guy's writings. He has just such beautiful perspective and just love for...
And what's his name again?
These children. So his name is Jerome Lejeune. He's from France. Pretty recent. He actually died in the 90s. Honey. But anyway... So then when I'm doing more research about him, I discover this 2 weeks before he was born, that he actually discovered, I don't know how I missed this in like my project in high school. He discovered the extra chromosome in his Down syndrome patient.
Wow.
So he literally discovered where trisomy comes from. Before that, people thought that it was caused by like an STD. So like imagine that, like these poor women have these babies, special needs babies, and like they think it's their fault, right? So it was such a huge groundbreaking discovery, obviously. Yeah. But it was because of that discovery that genetic testing was invented, which is why he devoted the rest of his life to like... This is
not why I found that out.
Exactly. He's like, no, I'm looking for this so we can help these children. So just like super beautiful. And so then so I was so convicted about this that I like told my husband, I'm like, I think we need to make his middle name Jerome. Like, I think this man is just supposed to be like a role model for us in our life and a role model for our baby. So before he was born, I'd already kind of decided like we're probably going to name him after him. But then one of the other things I had researched about like trisomy is that one of the things that I saw, especially in those couple days when we were doing all the tests, is that most of them were born early, 38 weeks, which it's funny. Now as I do my own research, I actually find out that, 97% of them are induced. So I don't understand how would we even get to that statistic.
We don't ask questions.
So, of course. So anyway, but at the time I thought that, most of them are born early. So when I got past 38 weeks, even in my mind, I was like, well, okay, at this point, the possibility is 0, right? And so 38 weeks comes by, 39, 40, and then 41 comes by. And I'm like, all right, we're officially like late in pregnancy. And honestly, there was so much providence surrounding that. Like the week before Dominic was born, so like between 41 and 42 weeks, I'm a realtor and I got like 3 homes under contract, which I was like, okay, this is great because that means like we'll get paid for them in like 3 weeks, which means I can have like a full maternity leave, right? Ended up being even more providential than I could ever imagine because we ended up spending like 3 weeks in the NICU and my husband couldn't go back to work and it was just this whole thing and like literally that income like got us by. So whereas if he was born at 40, like I wouldn't have had that. Once again, so much providence, just like he just came when it was time, which was wonderful. And then at 42 weeks on that day, I was super thankful once again for my midwife just being so respectful. She was not worried about me going past 42. She presented to me options like, if you want, we can do an ultrasound, make sure the placenta's good. These are some things that some women choose at 42, but I'm open to whatever you want. And a lot of states have laws about that actually regarding home birth. Tennessee doesn't, so I was just so thankful.
Arkansas does, yeah.
Yeah, I was really thankful that Tennessee doesn't, and I was just so grateful to not have that pressure.
Yes.
I did decide that I was okay with a membrane sweep. She had presented it to me a couple days before, and I just really thought about it, and then I just felt like, you know what? I'm okay, like giving him a little nudge, and that's what I felt like that was. It didn't feel very invasive to me. I know for a lot of women that just feels like it's too much, but for me, it just felt right. And so exactly on 42 weeks at 3 p.m., she came and did the membrane sweep, and she told me I was like, I think I was 1 centimeter dilated, and I'm like, great. This was also very confusing to me because I was induced with my first, but I was induced like halfway through, like when I was almost 40 weeks. Okay. And I was already 4.5 centimeters when they induced me. So I was like walking around dilating. So I was like, all right, I guess I'm like not going into labor anytime soon, even though once again, so stupid to base anything off of dilation, which is why like it's not even a good idea to check. Yeah, so that was at 3 p.m. And then literally right after she leaves, my husband texts me and he's like, I'm on my way home from work early. He's like, I'm really just like not feeling good. I think he knew in his gut, baby's coming like now, like soon. And he knew he needed to be like on and ready. So he's like, I just like need to go to bed. Like, I do not feel good. So I'm like, okay, that's fine. So he comes home, he goes and he lays in bed. And I'm like, okay, I need to get my toddler out of the house so like my husband can like really sleep. So I take him to Dollar General and I'm like, I realized we didn't have like Chuck's pads. So I'm getting like Chuck's pads. I am at 42 weeks. I don't even have everything I need. So we grabbed Chuck's pads. And as I'm walking out of Dollar General, I like feel a cramp. And I was like, interesting. But I was like, that wasn't a contraction though. Keep in mind, I had Pitocin with my first. So Pitocin contractions feel 100% different than natural contractions.
They're vicious.
Like, yeah, well, not only in intensity, but just the whole dynamic feels so different. Like Pitocin contraction feel like your entire uterus is just like being squished. Whereas like, at least for me, the natural contractions felt like very localized in a specific spot. And I just was like, oh, am I like constipated or something? Like it didn't even occur to me that it was labor. I was like, oh, that's interesting. I thought maybe like my digestive system was like revving up and like getting ready, but I wasn't going to go into labor like the next day. Like it just didn't even occur to me that like I could, it could be time for baby soon. So like get home, I had another one. Interesting. So I didn't even tell my midwife about it. Didn't wake up my husband or anything. I'm just like, whatever, going along with the day. And then at exactly 7 o'clock, I remember this. I looked at my watch at exactly 7 o'clock. I'm standing in my living room and I feel one of the cramps and I'm like, okay, that was actually kind of intense. Like maybe this is labor. And like the minute I think that, literally the minute my doorbell rings and I'm like, who is at my house? Like we live out in the country. Nobody just comes to our house. Like who is here? So I like open up the front door and this woman is standing there with her husband. She's like, hey, I've been messaging someone on Facebook Marketplace about buying a bed. And I was like, oh yeah, that was me. That was 2 days ago. So much life has happened. I completely forgot that I told you to come here at 7 p.m. on Tuesday, which I don't even know why I would think like, oh, I'm going to be 42 weeks in 2 days. That's a good time for you to come over and
That's
get
a good time for you to, you want to attend a
for me
labor
to,
while you do that?
yeah, exactly. So I'm like, oh, so then I'm like, okay, Random Strangers in my house right now. So I bring them to the garage. They're loading this bed up. They're taking forever. They're super chatty. And I made the mistake of telling them my husband used to work on race cars. Of course, I thought it was the coolest thing ever. They're asking me a million questions about it. And I'm like, I just need you to leave my house.
What?
And I'm literally standing there talking to them and I'm like, 1 second. I'm run upstairs, have a contraction, come back downstairs.
Oh my goodness. I would
talking to them.
That's hilarious. Not having contraction in front of them to make them leave.
Yeah, well, that was the thing. We've been trying to sell this bed for months. So I was like, okay, we got to get rid of this thing. And then, of course, my first thought is I have to put the chickens in. So, I walk down this massive hill in my backyard. The chickens are not ready to go in yet. So I'm picking them up and shoving them in the coop and closing the door. Come back up the hill. And then they're ready to go. And then I realized oh wait, there was these bolts and screws that go with the bed. And I didn't know where they were. So I'm like, okay, I'm going to go wake up my husband. So I go upstairs. My husband's in his deep, deep sleep. When you're kind of sick and you take a nap and it's just it's just
You're
almost
just
impossible to
knocked
wake you up.
out. Yeah.
So I wake him up. He's so delirious. I'm like, hey, there's this couple in our garage. They're trying to buy that bed. I need you to go find the bolts and screws. And he's like, what? He's so disoriented. And then the minute I say that, I fall on the ground in hands and knee positions and I start breathing really heavy. And he's like, I'm like, also, I think I'm in labor.
Also, in case you didn't pick up that clip.
So he's like, what? And I'm like, okay, but first things first, we have to get these people out of our house. So just go do that, please. I will deal with the baby for now. So he goes downstairs. So this is at 7:15, 7:20 that he's downstairs with them. Of course, I can hear them being like, tell us about the race cars you used to build. And I'm like, oh my gosh. I'm walking around my house and then I'm just okay, I put my toddler in the bathtub. I'm like, you just need to be contained right now. And I'm walking around the bathroom and the bedroom connected to the bathroom. And I'm just laboring, truly laboring. It was intense at that point. And I was I didn't even know where my phone was to call my midwife. I just was I don't know what's going on. So, and I kept thinking oh, my husband will be back up any minute. And it was 15, 20 minutes, right? But in those 15 minutes, literally labor went from 0 to 100. It was so intense. So my husband comes back upstairs and I'm like, call Cheryl. So he goes to call her. But as he's looking for the phone and picking up the phone and going to call her, I'm thinking oh, she's going to ask me how far apart the contractions are. So I start looking at my watch and counting them just in the, I don't know, 5-6 minutes it took to get her on the phone. And so the first thing she says is, how are they consistent? And Garrett looks at me, he's like, are they consistent? And I'm like, no, but they're 3 minutes apart.
So yes.
He's like, are they consistently 3 minutes apart? And I was like, I mean, I've only been doing this for a half hour, so this has to be early labor. This must just be I don't know, sometimes at the beginning of labor, it feels they're really close together, but really they're I don't know. She's like, and then she hears me have a contraction and she's like, I can hear her running to her car.
Uh-huh.
And she's like, I am 40 minutes away. Just call me if you need me. I also text my best friend and I'm like, I need you to come get the toddler. They both text me when they're getting in the car and they both say we'll get there at 8:30, right? They both, so we're having this conversation with them at 7:45-ish. They both arrived at our house at 8:30. And so I was in and out of the shower, for the next 30 minutes, until they got there. I'm in and out of the shower. I'm and I remember my thought was I feel such a wimp. This is so intense and this is only early labor. How am I going to be able to do active labor and, transition? If I can't even do early labor, but little did I know I was almost in transition. And so my friend comes, picks up my son, and then we had about 10 minutes before my midwife got there, and it was actually so beautiful. So my husband's running around the house trying to prepare the house, but at this point I am just kind of mentally wigging out, especially thinking about how am I going to do this for 10 more hours, which is what I truly thought I had in front of me. And I like go to my husband and I'm like, I know you're probably doing something important, but I just like need you right now. So he like comes into the bedroom, we like turned off all the lights, and it was just like it was so beautiful. He was just like the words he was like speaking into my ear and speaking into my heart were just like exactly what I needed to hear. Like it was clear that the Holy Spirit was like so present, like so present. And I had listened to like dozens of like Christian hypnobirthing stuff. And I told him, like, all the stuff you're saying is way better than any of the stuff on those recordings. Like, he was just so good at just like speaking to exactly what I needed to hear. And especially the things that he kept saying, which were so helpful, was he just kept like helping me to like imagine like what our baby looks like. And he's like, is he going to have blue eyes? Is he going to have like hair that looks like Joseph? Or is he going to look just totally different? Is he going to look like you or me or one of your brothers? And like, it was just like really beautiful the way he was just like getting me so excited to meet him that it was just making the contractions just so much easier. And I think that the labor was truly very difficult, honestly. And I think it was because everything was happening so quickly. I couldn't really get into like labor land. I couldn't kind of like disassociate. I was like just so aware of what was going on like the whole time, just because everything was happening so fast. And so, you know, after about 10 minutes of just like really having this beautiful like laboring moment, and I remember truly feeling like this is it. Like this is the birth that I wanted. Like this is just something I could never imagine happening not at home, right? It was our own bedroom and our own space, and we could just be husband and wife and like not surrounded by a million people in like a horrible room, right? And I just was like, this is what I've been wanting, and this is it. It was just so beautiful, so healing. So my midwife runs in my door. She like drops her stuff at the door and runs right up to me. And she's like, are you comfortable with the check? I would just love to know if like how fast someone needs to get here to like help me out. And I was like, honestly, that's fine. She checked me really quick. She's like, you're 7 centimeters. And I was like, oh my gosh, 7 centimeters in like an hour. How did that happen? So I tell my husband, I'm like, we probably have like 2 more hours left and then we'll get to be with our baby, right? And then probably I ask her, I'm like, do we have time for the pool? She's like, yeah, let me try setting it up. So she goes and she's setting up the pool while I'm laboring with my husband in the bedroom. And then probably 2 contractions later, I turn to him and I'm like, honey, this is hard. Like, I don't know if I can do this anymore. And it was funny because we had talked a lot about labor and like what it is that I would need to hear. And one of the things we had like rehearsed was like, when I say I can't do this anymore, it probably means I'm in transition. Oh, because like that's typically what happens to women when they say like, okay, I'm done. It's because they're like almost done. Yeah. And so I was like, so when I say I can't do this anymore, you respond by saying like, well, that means it's almost time. Like, this is great. So I like turn to my husband. I'm like, wait, this is like so hard. I don't know if I can do this. I can't do this anymore. And he's like so flustered. He's like, wait, really? Wait, what? No, it can't be happening right now. He's like, I think you can do it. I think you can. And he's like so flustered. And so then I was like,
that is the cutest.
It was so funny. And so then I was like, actually, yeah, I'm feeling the urge to push. And he's like, what? So he like runs out. He's like, Cheryl, she told me she's pushing. So Cheryl's like runs in our bedroom and she's like, the bed wasn't set up. Like nothing was set up. Like we were not prepared at all.
You'd bought Chex Pez this morning.
Yeah, well, I had everything ready, but it wasn't like I had made the bed with the plastic cover. Right. Like, I don't know. I just thought that I would have a little bit of time in early labor where like my husband could do all of that. And then we could set up the pool and all of those things, right? But no, we had no time for any of that. So he grabs the box, which has like the coverings for the bed. And my midwife just like literally just throws it on the bed. And then she looks at me. This is like the most epic moment. She looks at me. She's like, okay, are you bearing down right now? And I was like, yeah. And she just grabs a Chex pad. She literally throws it at my feet. The second it hits the ground, my water explodes. And my husband starts laughing. He's like, that was hilarious. Like, what just happened? And then I'm like, okay, he's crowning. And so my midwife says, okay, come over to the bed. And this was honestly the only moment in my whole birth that I had a little bit of like a trauma response, because with my first, basically what happened is that I had been laboring and I was like standing on the bed and I had been laboring really well. And I told them like, okay, I'm I'm starting to push. And they like freaked out and they made me like lay on my back when I told them like, I don't want to lay on my back. And they were like, no, just lay on your back. And but basically it was this whole thing. It's like, as soon as I said I was going to start pushing, everybody just like, I had no control anymore. They just like threw me on my back and like, it was awful. So she's like, okay, come over to the bed. And I literally was like, no, I'm not laying on the bed. Because like she was saying like, you're going to mess up your entire bedroom with blood. Like, come over to where the plastic is so that you don't like, it was just funny because like she was definitely not trying to like manipulate my positioning at all. Yeah. She was just like, hey, it would be cleaner if you stood over here. And so I was
come
like,
over towards the stuff.
And she's like, that's fine. Can you just like, do you want to just lean on the bed? And I was like, okay. I'm like leaning on the bed, but I didn't even get to the bed. As I'm walking, he just literally flies out of me. And so she like caught him like the second he flew out. And so then I kind of like lay on the bed and she puts him next to me. And just immediately we knew there was something wrong. He was just not really breathing. She was trying to stimulate him and get him to breathe. And he just wasn't. She was like giving him puffs of air and like suctioning him. None of that was really working. And so she just looks at my husband and she's like, hey, I need you to call 911. Once again, my husband was just incredible. He picks up the phone, calls 911, puts the phone on the bed on speaker, turns around, picks up the holy water, kneels down next to me. The baby's like kind of like on my side and the midwife's like working on him and just trying to get him to start breathing. And he just kneels down right next to me and he just baptizes the baby. And it was so like profound, so profound, like so beautiful. Just like, and I was so grateful. And my husband just had these instincts of like, I'm his father and I'm here to protect him physically, but also like right now I'm going to care for his whole soul. Like his soul is what I'm caring for right now.
His whole person.
Yeah, it was so beautiful. I think so many people. Yeah, I think so many, men and women would get so caught up in the physical that it would just be so easy to forget. But he just, not for a second, he just knew exactly what he needed to do. And so she put him on oxygen. She had an oxygen tank with like a mask and he had some amniotic fluid that he had aspirated. That was the problem, is that he aspirated amniotic fluid. And so once she was able to suck a lot of it out, but he still had some. And so she put the oxygen on him. The paramedics came and I was just like, oh my gosh, so grateful for her because she just like took control of the room, was like telling the paramedics exactly what to do, exactly what hospital to take them to. They wanted to take him somewhere else. She's like, no, you're taking him to this hospital. And she was like, Dad's going to go with him. Mom's going to stay here. I'm going to stitch her up and then we'll be right behind you. So anyway, my husband leaves with the baby. Still, I'm telling you, just a peace beyond understanding. Like, I just knew he was going to be okay. I think I had so much comfort knowing that his soul was taken care of. I'm like, if he dies, he's going straight to heaven and like the Lord has him. And I just felt so much peace even in that moment. And in that moment too, I was just like, okay, because also the 15 minutes between when he was born and when the paramedics got there were, once again, so peaceful. I think we were just like very much riding on the grace of that baptismal moment and like just loving on him and singing to him. And there was a moment too when once we got the oxygen on him, he was stable. So we knew like, okay, he needs to go get checked out, but we knew he was going to be okay right now. And so I just had I just had time with him and we were just cuddling with him and singing to him. And it was just really, really beautiful. And then he was finally like at peace because he could breathe because he had the oxygen mask on. And then, the paramedics took him to the NICU. And even still at this point, I wasn't like thinking, oh, there's something seriously wrong. I was like, oh yeah, it was born really fast. That was really intense. So yeah. Also, before the paramedics got there, my midwife looks at me and she's like, do you think you can push out your placenta? I'm like, I think I can. And she like grabs a bowl and I literally just pushed and it like flew out. And I'm like, I was so grateful that the Lord had given me a very uncomplicated experience. Like I was actually very shocked by the lack of blood. It was just very, very simple for me.
Good.
Which was so, so good. And I had like a very little tear, I had a very little tear. She told me normally I wouldn't even stitch you, but she's like, I'm kind of worried about you like sitting in a wheelchair in the NICU for the next couple days. So I just want to make sure that you heal correctly. So she did end up stitching me, which I was grateful for.
Yeah.
I thought that was a good call.
Yeah, I mean, if you're not gonna be able to rest, you can't heal very well. So
Exactly, exactly. And like
she had the
like
forethought.
there was no like laying flat in the NICU.
Right.
Like I laid flat like at night and that was it. So I knew then. So my husband goes to the NICU. He's like texting me pictures of Dominic there, and
So
I
you
maybe
didn't get
I
to go with them at first?
no I yeah. So my husband went in the ambulance, and then but my midwife wanted to make sure like I was stitched up and I was good, and then
Sure.
she drove
Gotcha.
me.
Okay.
So, and yeah, by the way, the second midwife was like on her way and arrived after the paramedics left, like right after the paramedics left. So, like, she was navigating all this like completely on her own. She just did such a fantastic job. So, the second midwife came and then they like gave to basically like stitch me up. I took a really quick shower. They fed me chicken soup. I was like ready to eat right away. And then we went to the NICU. And when my husband texted me a picture of him, I looked at him and I was like, okay. I felt like I didn't get a really good look at him when he was like on my chest and like being baptized and all that with the mask on. But when he sent me a picture, I was like, okay, yeah, he looks like I had never seen a trisomy 18 baby, but he looked like a Down syndrome baby. I'm like, he just looks a little different.
Right.
Just in his face. Like it wasn't like huge things, which is what I was expecting for a trisomy 18. He just looked like a little different. So I was like, okay, interesting. And then when we got there, they were like, we can't really figure out what's going on. And then what they did is that hospital, it was like the children's hospital area, was where we got our fetal echocardiogram. So they had my genetic testing on file. And the minute they found that, it was like everything clicked. They were like, well, maybe this is what's wrong. But nobody suspected it at first because he looked like so normal. And so anyway, so he had aspirated the amniotic fluid, so he had to be intubated for like a day. So the first day was definitely very hard because he was just suffering like a lot and we just didn't understand what was wrong. The doctors really did such a beautiful job of just like slowly introducing us to the idea of what was going on. And not like I've heard stories of girls that get like pretty severe diagnoses for their kids and the doctors just walk around and they're like, so this is a problem. I have bad news. Our doctors were not like this at all. It was almost like every couple hours they would come in and be like, hey, can I show you something? And they would like show me how his hands were clenched. And they're like, so this is one of the reasons we might be suspecting that there's a genetic disorder, but like we don't have any results yet. I just want to prepare you and just see, you know? And then a couple hours later they come in and like, so this is what we saw in the lungs and like it's kind of pointing in this direction. It was just so gentle. They just did such a good job. I was so impressed. And so we were just like slowly coming to terms with the fact that he probably had trisomy 18. And so yeah, it was definitely like a whirlwind of an experience, like definitely like a lot of tears at the beginning and a lot of like, what is this? But the Lord kept continuing to give us this peace. And then I also just kept thinking about these dreams that I had had about this man, Jerome Lejeune. And I started just like in the times that I was like sitting next to him in the hospital, just like reading some of his writings and reading. He had stuff that he would send to parents who would get diagnoses like this. And it was just so beautiful, like such beautiful material. And you could just tell that this man had such a talent. People used to say he had a talent for helping parents fall in love with their children. And that's exactly what was happening. I mean, we were already in love with them, but just like falling more and more in love with them, you know, with everything that was going on for him. So we were praying and praying. And then when we first found out his diagnosis, we were just asking around the doctors and nurses, and we were like, how long are these babies usually in the NICU? What do you usually expect? And they all said minimum 2 months. He was born in August. They said minimum 2 months, but just be prepared for like 2025, you know, like January, basically. And I was like, oh my goodness, I don't know how we're going to do this. It was just like, and then it was just like every little thing, like after they're like, well, let's try to extubate him. But if he doesn't extubate, what do you want to do? And then we ended up extubating him and he was fine. And we're like, so he went on like high flow oxygen. And then they brought him down a step and then down a step and then down a step. What'd you say?
I was just wondering if ever is it because he was doing, I mean, obviously you were in the NICU, he wasn't doing well, but because he was doing like decent or because his heart was well, that they weren't trying to word my thoughts here. I'm sorry. I know that generally the majority of survival rates are very low for even past the first,
Yes,
10 days, first month, which I want, like some of
absolutely.
our listeners might not even know that. And I'm not even hearing
Yes.
you mention that. So were they even
Yeah.
worried about his life expectancy? Because they're saying you're going to be here
Oh,
for months when most don't even survive months.
yeah.
So
I
was
mean,
that
that
even
was
being
like best
brought
case
up?
scenario that he would be there for months. Like that was,
Okay.
we were prepared and they prepared us for him to pass at any moment.
Okay.
Because not only, like, as you said, not only are their survival rates very low at the beginning, but they typically die very suddenly. So it's not
Right.
like you can see, like, I see this problem and this is probably what they'll die of. Like a lot of times just random things happen. And so
Mhm.
we were very much prepared
So they were
to like,
preparing you for that.
yes, absolutely, 100%. I think now that he's doing so well, when I look back on that, I forget that was even like our mentality. Like
Sure.
I forget how prepared we were for him to die and how deeply we lived in that for so long because we're just so not there anymore.
Praise God.
Praise God. No, truly, truly. But it just kept, I kid you not, it was like miracle after miracle after miracle. So it's like, we're going to extubate him. We'll see how he does. And like, we knew, okay, when they extubate him, he might pass like right away, right? So we're prepared. Then they extubate him. He's fine. They put him on high flow oxygen. We start bringing down the oxygen and he keeps being fine. They did an echocardiogram again, and he had no heart defect. So he's one of the like 6% of trisomy 18 kids that doesn't have a heart defect, which is crazy.
Right.
What was the other thing? He's still like, so the biggest problem he's always had is oxygen, is breathing. He's always had a hard time breathing. So that was kind of like the thing we were looking at the NICU, but they did brain scans. A lot of these babies have seizures. It was just like one thing after another. They're like, miraculously, like, this is good. He's good in this area. He's good in this area. I'm like, what? Like, it was truly like the Lord, like, just kept giving us like what we believed were true miracles.
True.
So, yeah. And then we left the NICU after 18 days, which was
Wow.
a miracle.
Wow.
We were shocked. And yeah,
It's
but
kind of
we went
interesting
home
that
on
it's on
hospice.
18 days with trisomy 18.
I know, right? Yeah. Right. Yeah. And so we went home from the hospital after 18 days. We went home on hospice, still very much expecting for him to
Yeah.
pass at any moment. Basically what they told us when we left, they're like, so at this point, just be prepared that if he gets sick, that could likely be, what takes him. And so we had very much decided though that we were not afraid of death and we were not going to live in fear of that. So we very much wanted to take him to church and to, we weren't going to be so afraid of germs that we weren't going to take him anywhere. And we also we knew we weren't going to want to do long hospital stays. So we were going to, so we chose home hospice to basically be our next step. So we were home and he did so well. He did really well for about 3 more weeks. And then when he was 6 weeks old, he had an incident in his car seat. We think he might have aspirated again, but it was awful. It was truly awful. It was actually the most traumatic thing, way more traumatic than the NICU or birth or anything like that. It was awful. And so then after that, he was on oxygen for about 2 months and he was really struggling. And then in November, once again, my amazing husband, Dominic, was struggling so much. He was on all these machines, and then he also was having something called central apnea, which is when the babies just forget to breathe.
Yeah.
So we had him hooked up to a pulse ox, and every time it would kind of go down, we would have to shake him and remind him to breathe. It was so stressful, so awful. And one day, my husband wakes up one morning. Well, we were taking shifts at night because someone had to be awake with him at all times. My husband's praying with his Bible in the morning, and I wasn't there for this. He said it wasn't even a very long time, but he just decided to lay hands on Dominic and pray for healing. And he said it was just a few minutes, just very simple. But he very much felt the Holy Spirit present. And then after that, he was just okay. He didn't do anything, say anything. A couple hours later, I woke up, and I woke up with this very strong conviction that I should try turning off the oxygen machine and trial him off of oxygen. And it didn't really make sense because we had trialed him off of oxygen a couple days before, and after 2 minutes he was blue in the face, and I was okay, he's obviously not ready for that. So that was like 3 or 4 days prior. So here I am. It's like the week before Thanksgiving. I come out. My husband like goes downstairs to start work, and I just turn off the oxygen machine, and he was fine. And I'm like, okay. I didn't want to say anything. I didn't want to make a big deal. I'm like, we'll just see how he does for a couple hours. A couple hours later, the hospice nurse comes over and she like looks at him. She's like, what happened? And I'm like, well, I don't know, but he apparently doesn't need oxygen anymore. She's like, okay, like, has he had an apnea episode? And I'm like, no. And she's like, okay. So then I'm like, all right. So I go and I like yell down. I'm like, Garrett, come upstairs. So like Garrett comes up. I'm like, so he's not on oxygen and he's not had an apnea episode. And Garrett's like, uh-huh. He's like, well, I mean, I prayed for healing this morning and I knew that the Lord had healed him, but I don't know. I just knew. And I was like, okay. So literally, I mean, it was insane. It was so beautiful. So he has not really needed any oxygen since. That was almost a year ago. And he has just been doing incredible. So I don't think I said the statistics before, but 90% of trisomy 18 babies don't even make it to birth. 90% of the babies that make it to birth don't make it to their first birthday. So we were very much, for the whole year, really living in, especially the first 6 months, really living in like every day we have to live in the moment of just like recognizing that at any moment the Lord could take him to heaven. And then, but he just kept doing great, right? And so anyway, now he's 14 months old and
look at him.
He's just been through all these milestones. He's so cute. He loves to move. He rolls around all the time. He's very, very developmentally delayed. So he has a G tube, which is like a feeding tube in his stomach because he struggles to feed. But I mean, like most trisomy 18 kids can't eat at all, whereas he will take like almost half of his bottle by mouth now, which is crazy. Like when I tell people that, they're like, how? Like that's amazing. And yeah, like he just started rolling like a few months ago and he's almost a year. And it's not likely that he'll be able to like walk, but you just never know.
You never know because God's doing whatever he wants.
Truly, yeah. And he's in a lot of therapy which he loves. He thinks it's so fun, and he smiles and laughs, and he's just a beautiful, beautiful baby. He's just the joy of our life. But it was I didn't say this too, but like we were looking, like holding out for that first cold. Like, okay, this is going to be it. And he gets the cold, and we're like, oh my gosh. And then he's like, fine. We're like, okay. And then they even told us, they're like, okay, but just RSV. Like RSV is really bad. And we're like, okay. So he gets RSV, and I'm like, oh no. And then he's fine. He didn't even get hospitalized, which like a lot of kids, normal kids that are babies that get RSV, like might end up in the hospital. No, he was fine. Then he got COVID. He was fine. I'm like, what the heck? Like, he's just amazing. Yeah, he's just, amazing. So we're just so thankful for his life. We're so grateful. Yeah, and I look back on my pregnancy, and I just had such a wonderful pregnancy with him. So I'm so grateful that, you know, the Lord gave me that peace, but that we really didn't know very much. And and I'm pregnant now too. And
congratulations.
Thank you. Yeah, I'm 17 weeks. But right at the beginning, my husband was like, no testing, no ultrasounds. I want to know nothing. And I'm like, all right, I'm down for that. And it's beautiful. Like, we're very convicted. Like, it is better not to know anything. Because you can deal with anything when it comes, but you can't deal with stuff when you don't have anything you can do about it. And that's when it's very difficult. Yeah, that's why prenatal testing is just like, I just don't think it's helpful in most cases, but at least for us.
A story.
So that's my story. Sorry, it was kind of long.
No, it was a beautiful story, and it was a long journey for you, and it deserves every minute of what you needed to share it. And I'm just so thankful to hear it, and to hear that he is still thriving. At 14 months, you know, he's like in the 1%. Like,
I know. I think it's like 5%.
Top
but
5%. I mean,
5 or 7. Yeah.
Yeah. Like,
but the thing that's actually interesting about trisomy 18 too is that once they do hit 1, their statistics do. Of course, it's all based on statistics, so it's not like you know, anything that can be totally dependent on. But the statistics go way up. So once they hit 1, it's like actually quite likely that they'll make it to at least 10.
Okay.
So at this point, we're like, I think we're in for the long haul.
Yeah.
So, But at the same time, recognizing that, it's all in God's hands.
Yeah.
But I think
And all of
it
our
was
lives
beautiful because,
are, you know,
yeah, and ever
ultimately,
since
none
the
of us know
beginning,
if we
like,
have tomorrow.
of course, yeah. And ever since the beginning, even in the first few days, it was almost like we couldn't grieve what we wouldn't have because we were just so grateful for the fact that we had way more time with him than we, should have, right?
Right.
And just recognizing that like it was already a miracle that he made it that far, that it's like how I just was, and that's true. It's like I've had this incredible year with him. I recognize that the Lord could take him to heaven at any moment, but there's just so much to be grateful for. It's almost hard to like think about, oh, that's so sad that he might not make it to like 15 or something,
Right. Yeah. It's just it's a story of joy, like is what I hear.
Yes,
So
100%.
that is, what would you say is like your greatest lesson that you've learned in this or that he's taught you?
I think it's that God's plan is always better.
Mm. Yeah.
Um, and that he's guiding us in every moment, and everything that happens is, all part of his will. Yeah, I think that's probably the biggest thing that we've learned. And that he's a God of miracles. I mean,
That he
we've
is.
just seen so much grace in Dominic's life. He's every day, I'm just like, this kid is a miracle. Like, this is crazy.
Yeah. Oh, well, I'm blown away by the hand of God. That is obviously so just on your story and every bit of it. And I would love, like, is there any, I guess, parting thoughts or things that you really want our listeners to know before we wrap up here?
I think, okay, I'll specifically say about raising a special needs child because it was not something I was ever exposed to. I was never really around kids like this at all until Dominic was born. I think I've learned so much about the dignity of each person, God's plan for each person, but especially like Dominic, I actually feel like he's just very close to God. And I think it's because he's incapable of sinning. And so he's just going to live in the grace of his baptism for his whole life, and never lose that grace like the rest of us do when we sin. And I think society kind of looks at kids that can't be quote unquote productive members of society and see it as this like how it's not valuable. And I just wish, I mean, I know all of our listeners are not those kind of people, but I wish that people could see how much these children actually do bring to families and their communities, because it's actually so much. And there's so much love and so much grace that Dominic has brought not only to our family, but to our extended family, to our community, our church community, and just everybody he meets. That just because he's never going to be able to like have a job doesn't mean he's not like just such a light and such a testimony of God's love for us. And so I just, yeah, that's kind of what I wanted to say.
Well, thank you for sharing that, and thank you for sharing his light here. First, Dominic's light, but ultimately sharing God's light
Of course.
for our listeners to see see God through this story. And it's such a good one. It's such a good reminder that it is God's ways and it's God having the final say. And we try with our tests and our questions and our
Yeah.
stats and all of the things, and then you have his ways are higher always. And God,
I know. I think I've realized so much more. Like everyone, the doctors are always going to try to tell you what's going to happen,
right,
but nobody knows what's
nobody
going to
knows.
happen.
We don't know.
So we have to just like live in the will of the Lord.
Yes. Well, thank you so much. We're so honored to have you on and hear Dominic's story. And I should have asked you beforehand, would you be willing or would desire to pray for our listeners?
Yeah, it sounds good. Dear Lord, I thank you for the gift of this community of women who are just passionate about honoring your will and specifically your design for our bodies. Lord, help us to be more convicted in our vocation and mission to co-create with you. Lord, help. Please bless all of our children, all of our families, all of our communities. Please help us to be more convicted of what it means to truly follow you and what it means to truly surrender control and trust in you completely. And Lord, I just ask for a special grace upon all of the mothers listening today, that they just be more convicted in your love for them, and that they may shine that love and be able to offer it and give it to their families and their communities. Amen.
Thank you so much for tuning in to this week's episode of Holy Wild Birth. We hope that you were genuinely encouraged, inspired, and challenged by what you heard today. If you're loving what you hear, please make sure that you share it. Leave reviews. That helps other mamas find this content as well. And don't forget to read the show notes, okay? Because that's where you can find our email address if you want to reach out to us and start a conversation. It's also where you'll find free offerings as well as invitations to work with me and or Lauren. We can't wait to get to know you. See you next week.